What if the reason you're stuck is because you're trying too hard? I know that sounds completely backwards, but stick with me for a second. There's this weird psychological glitch that happens when you want something desperately. The more you chase it, the faster it runs away from you. And I'm not talking about some mystical nonsense here. This is your own brain sabotaging you. And once you see how it works, everything changes. The craziest part, the solution isn't to want it more or try harder. It's to do something that feels completely wrong at first. But it's exactly what separates people who get what they want from people who stay stuck wanting it forever. Here's where things get wild. There's this thing called the backwards law, and it's been messing with people's heads for centuries. Basically, the more you want something, the less likely you are to get it. And I'm not just talking about wanting it a little bit. I'm talking about that desperate, can't sleep at night, checking your phone every 2 minutes kind of wanting that makes you feel crazy. Think about the last time you really wanted someone to text you back. Maybe it was someone you were dating, or a job interview, or even just a friend you hadn't heard from. The more you wanted that notification, the more you kept checking your phone, right? And every time you looked and there was nothing, you felt worse. Your energy got more desperate, more needy, and somehow that person could sense it through the screen. They felt your desperation without even knowing why, and it pushed them away. Or here's another one that'll hit close to home. Ever notice how when you're broke and desperately need money, nobody wants to hire you? You walk into interviews with this energy that screams, "I need this job so bad it hurts," and employers can smell that desperation from across the room. But then when you already have a good job and you're just casually looking around, suddenly everyone wants you. Companies start reaching out, offering you better positions. Same skills, same experience, but completely different energy. It happens with dating too, and this one's brutal. When you really want a relationship, when you're lonely and putting all this pressure on every date to be the one, you become this intense, try-hard version of yourself. You overthink every text, analyze every gesture, and somehow manage to scare off perfectly good people. But the moment you're genuinely happy being single, when you've stopped caring so much about finding someone, that's when people start gravitating toward you. It's like they can sense that you don't need them to complete you, and that makes you magnetic. The same thing happens with creativity. You sit down to write the perfect song, paint the perfect picture, or come up with the brilliant business idea that's going to change your life. You stare at that blank page or canvas with all this pressure and expectation, and nothing comes. Your brain just freezes up. But then you're just messing around, not trying to create anything special, and suddenly you're in flow. The ideas pour out effortlessly, even with sleep, which is probably the most obvious example. The harder you try to fall asleep, the more awake you become. You're lying there thinking, "I need to sleep, I have to be up early, why can't I just fall asleep?" And your brain takes that as a signal to stay alert. But when you're naturally tired and not fighting it, you drift off without even realizing it. Here's what's really happening behind the scenes. Your brain is constantly reading your energy and translating it into reality. When you want something desperately, you're literally broadcasting the frequency of not having it. You're in a state of lack, of neediness, of "I don't have this thing and I'm incomplete without it." And your brain, trying to be helpful, keeps you in that exact state because that's what you keep focusing on. The wanting, not the having. But there's something even weirder about this whole thing. The people who seem to get everything effortlessly, they're not trying harder than you. They're not smarter or more deserving. They've just figured out how to flip this backwards law in their favor. They've learned to want things without needing them, to pursue goals without being attached to outcomes. And once you understand how they do it, you can't unsee it. Okay, so you're probably thinking this sounds like some new age mumbo-jumbo, but here's the thing. There's actual neuroscience behind why your brain sabotages you when you want something too much. And once you understand what's happening in your head, you'll never look at desperation the same way again. Your brain has this ancient system called the reticular activating system, or RAS for short. Think of it like a bouncer at a club, deciding what information gets into your conscious awareness and what gets filtered out. Every second you're bombarded with millions of pieces of sensory information, but you can only consciously process a tiny fraction of it. So your RAS picks what it thinks is important based on what you're focusing on. Here's where it gets interesting. When you desperately want something, your RAS starts scanning for evidence that you don't have it. It's like telling someone not to think about a pink elephant. Suddenly, that's all they can think about. Your brain becomes hyper-aware of every sign that you're lacking what you want. You start noticing all the couples when you're single, all the successful people when you're struggling, all the opportunities you're missing when you're desperate for a break. But there's an even deeper level to this. When you're in a state of intense wanting, your brain activates what scientists call the threat detection system. Your amygdala, which is basically your brain's alarm system, starts treating the lack of what you want as a potential threat to your survival. It floods your system with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense up, and you go into fight or flight mode. Now here's the crazy part. Other people's brains are wired to pick up on these stress signals. We have these things called mirror neurons that automatically detect and mirror the emotional states of people around us. So when you're desperate, when you're operating from that threat detection state, everyone around you unconsciously feels it. They don't know why, but something feels off. Their brain tells them to be cautious around you, to maybe keep their distance. Think about job interviews again. When you really need that job, when your rent depends on it, you walk in with elevated cortisol levels. Your voice might be slightly higher, your movements a bit more rigid, your smile forced. The interviewer's mirror neurons pick up on this stress, and even though they can't consciously identify what's wrong, they feel uncomfortable. Their brain associates you with tension and uncertainty. But it gets worse. There's this thing called the confirmation bias, where your brain actively looks for evidence to support what you already believe. If you believe you're unlucky in love, your rays will make sure you notice every rejection, every failed date, every time someone doesn't text back. It'll conveniently ignore the times when people were interested, but you were too focused on what wasn't working to see it. Your brain also has what neuroscientists call a negativity bias. It's an evolutionary hangover from when our ancestors needed to spot threats to survive. Your brain is literally wired to pay more attention to what's going wrong than what's going right. So when you're desperately wanting something, this negativity bias kicks into overdrive. You become hyper-focused on obstacles, problems, and reasons why things won't work out. There's also this fascinating phenomenon called cognitive load. When you're obsessing over something you want, a huge portion of your mental bandwidth gets tied up in worry, planning, and rumination. Your working memory, which is like your brain's RAM, gets clogged up with all this wanting and worrying. This leaves less mental capacity for creativity, problem solving, and actually taking effective action toward your goals. And here's something most people don't realize. Your brain can't tell the difference between vividly imagining something and actually experiencing it. When you're constantly visualizing what you don't have, when you're running scenarios in your head about how much better life would be if only you had this thing, you're literally training your brain to experience the gap between where you are and where you want to be. You're strengthening the neural pathways associated with lack and dissatisfaction. But here's where it gets really wild. There are people who seem to effortlessly attract what they want, and their brains are doing something completely different. Instead of activating threat detection systems, they're operating from what neuroscientists call the approach system. Their brains are relaxed, confident, and focused on possibilities rather than problems. Their RAS is scanning for opportunities instead of obstacles. Their mirror neurons are broadcasting calm confidence instead of desperate need. The craziest part, this isn't about being born lucky or having special genes. It's about understanding how to work with your brain instead of against it. And once you know how to flip these systems in your favor, everything starts to shift. But first, you have to stop feeding the very neural patterns that are keeping you stuck. Alright, so now that you understand why your brain is working against you, let's talk about the solution. And this is where things get really interesting, because what I'm about to share with you is the complete opposite of everything you've probably been told about manifesting and goal achievement. Most people think manifesting is about visualizing what you want, creating vision boards and repeating affirmations until you believe them. But here's the problem with that approach. You're still operating from a place of wanting. You're still focused on the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Your brain is still getting the message that you don't have what you're trying to manifest, which keeps you stuck in that same loop of lack. Evidence-free embodiment is completely different. It's not about convincing yourself that you have something when you clearly don't. It's not about fake it till you make it positive thinking. It's about dropping into the internal state of someone who doesn't need to want what you want because they already know it's inevitable. Think about something you're absolutely certain will happen. Maybe it's that you'll eat dinner tonight, or that tomorrow will come, or that your phone will eventually need to be charged. You don't sit around wanting these things to happen. You don't create vision boards about eating dinner. You don't repeat affirmations about tomorrow arriving. You just know they're going to happen, so you move through your day with that quiet certainty. That's the energy we're talking about. It's not excitement, because excitement implies that something unusual is happening. It's not desperation, because desperation means you're not sure you'll get it. It's this calm, grounded knowing that what you want is already on its way. It's like placing an order at a restaurant. Once you've ordered, you don't keep asking the waiter if your food is coming. You just relax and wait because you know it's being prepared. Here's where most people get confused. They think this means they have to feel good all the time or pretend everything is perfect. But that's not it at all. Evidence-free embodiment means you can acknowledge your current reality without being emotionally hijacked by it. You can see that you don't have the relationship, the money, or the career you want, but you don't let that fact create desperate energy in your system. It's like being an actor who's so good at their craft that they can embody a character without losing themselves in the role. You can play the part of someone who has what you want without needing external evidence to prove it's real. You're not lying to yourself or denying reality. You're accessing a different frequency, a different way of being that isn't dependent on your circumstances. The key difference between this and typical manifesting is that you're not trying to change your external world through mental effort. You're not pushing energy out into the universe hoping it bounces back as results. Instead, you're changing your internal frequency first, and then letting that shift naturally influence your actions, your decisions, and how other people respond to you. Think about confident people you know. Really confident people, not the ones who are trying to prove something. They don't walk around affirming how confident they are. They don't visualize being confident. They just are confident, and that confidence shows up in how they carry themselves, how they speak, how they make decisions. It's embodied. It's not something they're doing, it's something they're being. Evidence-free embodiment works the same way. When you truly embody the energy of someone who has what you want, you start making different choices. You stop checking your phone every 5 minutes waiting for opportunities. You stop talking about your problems with desperate energy. You stop scanning the environment for signs that things aren't working. Instead, you move through the world with this quiet assurance that things are unfolding exactly as they should. But here's the part that trips most people up. Your ego is going to hate this process. Your ego wants evidence. It wants proof. It wants to see results before it's willing to believe. But evidence-free embodiment requires you to embody the feeling first, before you have any logical reason to feel that way. It's like learning to trust your parachute before you jump out of the plane. Your rational mind will throw every objection in the book at you. This is ridiculous. Nothing has changed. You're just fooling yourself. What if it doesn't work? And here's the beautiful thing about evidence-free embodiment. You don't need to argue with those thoughts or try to convince your logical mind that it's wrong. You just acknowledge those thoughts and then drop back into the feeling state anyway. It's not about positive thinking or trying to override your doubts with willpower. It's about finding this place inside yourself that exists beyond your current circumstances, beyond your history, beyond what makes logical sense. It's about accessing the part of you that knows you're capable of having what you want, not because you've earned it or because you have evidence, but simply because you exist. And the wildest part, when you truly drop into this state, you stop needing to want what you thought you wanted, not because you've given up, but because you've tapped into something deeper. You realize that what you were really wanting wasn't the thing itself, but the feeling you thought the thing would give you. And that feeling, you already have access to it right now. Now here's where things get practical. Because you can't embody what you can't recognize. Most people have no idea when they're in a receiving state versus a desperate state, and that's why they keep bouncing back and forth between confidence and anxiety without understanding what's happening. Your body is constantly giving you feedback about what energy you're operating from, but you've probably been ignoring these signals your whole life. Think of it like learning to drive. At first, you had to consciously think about every little thing. Check your mirrors, signal, brake gently, turn the wheel. But eventually, your body learned to recognize the feeling of being in control of the car versus being out of control. You could sense it before your mind even processed what was happening. The same thing happens with receiving cues. Once you know what to look for, you'll be able to feel the difference between wanting energy and knowing energy in your body before your thoughts even catch up. Let's start with the most obvious one, your breathing. When you're in desperate wanting mode, your breathing becomes shallow and restricted. It moves up into your chest and throat. You might even find yourself holding your breath without realizing it, especially when you're checking your phone for messages or waiting for someone to respond. Your body is literally bracing for disappointment. But when you drop into receiving mode, your breathing automatically deepens. It moves down into your belly. Your exhales become longer and more complete. You're not forcing this to happen. It just does. It's like your nervous system finally feels safe enough to relax because you're not treating your desires like life or death situations anymore. Then there's your shoulders and jaw. Pay attention to these areas throughout the day because they're like barometers for your internal state. When you're white-knuckling your goals, your shoulders creep up toward your ears. Your jaw clenches, sometimes so subtly you don't even notice. You're physically bracing yourself against the possibility of not getting what you want. In receiving mode, your shoulders drop naturally, your jaw releases. There's this softness in your face that you can actually feel. It's not the fake relaxation you get from trying to calm down. It's the real relaxation that comes from genuinely not needing to control outcomes. Here's one that'll blow your mind once you start noticing it. Your eyes. When you're desperate for something, your eyes get this intense, focused quality. You're scanning, searching, hunting for signs that what you want is coming or reasons to worry that it's not. Your gaze becomes narrow and tight, like a predator tracking prey. But when you're in receiving mode, your peripheral vision opens up. Your eyes soften. You're not hunting anymore because you're not coming from a place of scarcity. You can actually see more of what's around you instead of being tunnel vision focused on what you think you need. Your voice changes too, and this one's huge because other people pick up on it immediately. Desperate energy makes your voice higher, faster, and more pressured. You might find yourself talking too much, over-explaining or speaking with this underlying tension that makes people unconsciously want to get away from you. It's not your fault. Your nervous system is activated, and that shows up in how you sound. Receiving energy completely transforms how you speak. Your voice drops into a lower register. You naturally speak slower because you're not rushing to convince anyone of anything. There are more pauses in your speech, but they're comfortable pauses, not awkward ones. People lean in when you talk instead of subtly pulling away. But here's the cue that most people miss, and it's probably the most important one: your relationship with time. When you're desperately wanting something, time becomes your enemy. You're constantly aware of how long it's been since you applied for that job, how many days since they said they'd call, how much time you've already wasted. Every moment feels urgent and pressured. In receiving mode, time becomes fluid. You're not constantly checking clocks or calculating how long things should take. You're present in whatever you're doing instead of mentally fast-forwarding to when you'll finally have what you want. It's not that you become irresponsible with time, but you stop having this adversarial relationship with it. Here's another big one. Your phone relationship completely changes. When you're in wanting mode, your phone becomes this slot machine of anxiety. You check it compulsively, hoping for the message, the call, the notification that will prove you're on the right track. Every time you look and there's nothing, you get a little hit of disappointment that feeds back into the desperate cycle. But when you're truly embodying receiving energy, you forget about your phone for hours at a time. You're engaged with your actual life instead of waiting for your phone to validate that your life is working. When you do check it, there's no emotional charge around what you might or might not find there. Your sleep patterns shift too. Desperate energy keeps you wired. You lie awake running scenarios, planning what you'll say, worrying about what could go wrong. Your mind won't shut off because it's treating your desires like problems that need to be solved immediately. Receiving energy lets you sleep deeply because you're not carrying the weight of making everything happen through mental effort. You can literally feel your nervous system downshift when you hit the pillow. Your body knows that rest is productive because you're not operating from scarcity anymore. But here's the cue that really separates people who get this from people who don't. Your relationship with other people's success. When you're desperate for something, seeing other people have what you want triggers you. You might feel jealous, resentful, or like their success somehow diminishes your chances. Your scarcity mindset makes you believe there's only so much good stuff to go around. In receiving mode, other people's success becomes inspiring instead of threatening. You genuinely feel happy for them because you know they're having something doesn't prevent you from having it too. You might even find yourself naturally attracted to successful people instead of avoiding them out of insecurity. The ultimate receiving cue is this sense of lightness in your chest. Not giddiness or excitement, but this quiet confidence that sits right behind your heart. It feels like you're carrying less weight, like you've put down bags you didn't even realize you were holding. You move through your day with this sense of ease that has nothing to do with your external circumstances and everything to do with how you're relating to them internally. Once you learn to recognize these cues, you can course correct in real time. The moment you notice your shoulders creeping up or your breathing getting shallow, you'll know you've slipped back into wanting mode. And instead of judging yourself for it, you can just gently shift back into receiving energy before you get stuck in a desperate spiral that lasts for days or weeks. All right, enough theory. You want to know exactly how to do this, step by step, without any mystical nonsense or vague instructions that leave you more confused than when you started. Here's the practical roadmap that actually works. First, you need to identify where you're currently white-knuckling your life. Grab a piece of paper and write down everything you've been desperately wanting for more than 3 months. Don't filter it or make it sound nice. Write down the raw truth. Maybe it's a relationship, a job, more money, recognition, health improvements, whatever. Just brain dump all of it. Now, next to each item, write down how much mental real estate it's taking up on a scale of 1 to 10. How often do you think about it? How much does not having it affect your mood? How many conversations do you have about it per week? Be brutally honest, because you can't fix what you won't acknowledge. Pick the thing that's taking up the most mental space. For the next 3 days, every time you catch yourself thinking about this thing, immediately do a body scan. Don't try to change anything, just notice. Are your shoulders tense? Is your breathing shallow? Is your jaw clenched? Are you holding your phone hoping for some kind of sign? Write these observations down. You're building awareness of your desperate patterns before you try to change them. Most people skip this step and wonder why nothing works. You can't shift out of an energy you haven't learned to recognize. This next part is where most people get stuck because they think acceptance means giving up. It doesn't. Acceptance means you stop spending energy fighting reality. For 5 minutes, sit with the truth that you don't currently have what you want. Don't try to fix it, justify it, or figure out how to get it. Just acknowledge it like you'd acknowledge that it's raining outside. Say it out loud if you have to. I don't have the relationship I want right now. I don't have the financial security I want right now. I don't have the career success I want right now. Feel the resistance come up, then breathe through it. This isn't permanent. It's just what's true today. Here's where things get interesting. For 1 hour, you're going to move through your day as if you're someone who already has what you want, but not in the fake it till you make it way. You're not going to act like you have money when you're broke or pretend you're in a relationship when you're single. Instead, you're going to embody the internal state of someone who has these things. How does someone who's financially secure move through the grocery store? They're not worried about prices, but they're also not wasteful. They make decisions from abundance, not scarcity. How does someone in a loving relationship treat strangers? They're more generous with their smiles because they're not desperately scanning everyone for romantic potential. Start with just 1 hour, because your brain will rebel if you try to do this all day. Set a timer, embody that energy for 60 minutes, then go back to normal. You're training your nervous system to remember what it feels like to operate from sufficiency instead of lack. This is the make or break step that separates people who get results from people who just feel good temporarily. Every action you take needs to come from your new energy, not your old desperation. If you're embodying financial abundance, you don't frantically apply to 50 jobs a day with panic in your voice. You research companies thoughtfully, craft personalized applications, and follow up with confident patience. If you're embodying relationship readiness, you don't swipe on dating apps for hours trying to find the one. You become genuinely interested in meeting people as humans, not as potential solutions to your loneliness problem. You show up to dates curious about them, not desperate for them to like you. Here's the key. Before you take any action related to what you want, ask yourself, is this action coming from abundance or scarcity? Am I doing this because I'm confident it's the right move, or because I'm afraid of what will happen if I don't? If it's coming from fear or desperation, don't do it. Wait until you can take the same action from a grounded place. Every week, do an honest assessment. How many times did you slip back into desperate energy? What triggered it? What were you doing when you felt most aligned with receiving mode? This isn't about perfection. It's about building awareness and catching yourself faster each time. Most people expect this to work immediately and then give up when they have a bad day. But you're rewiring decades of conditioning. It takes time. The goal isn't to never feel desperate again. It's to spend less time in desperation and recover faster when you do slip. Your environment either supports your new energy or sabotages it. If you're trying to embody financial abundance while constantly complaining about money with friends who are also broke, you're fighting an uphill battle. If you're trying to embody relationship readiness while spending hours on forums about how terrible dating is, you're feeding the wrong frequency. This doesn't mean you have to cut off all your friends or pretend your challenges don't exist, but you need to create spaces in your life that support your new way of being. Maybe that's limiting news consumption, unfollowing social media accounts that trigger scarcity, or spending more time with people who naturally operate from abundance. This is the advanced level stuff. You start taking inspired action, not because you need specific outcomes, but because the actions themselves feel aligned. You apply for jobs because the companies genuinely interest you, not because you desperately need employment. You go on dates because you enjoy connecting with people, not because you need someone to complete you. When you reach this level, results become secondary. You're engaged with the process of living fully instead of constantly measuring whether you're getting closer to your goals. Paradoxically, this is when things start flowing toward you effortlessly, because you're no longer pushing them away with desperate energy. The whole process usually takes 3 to 6 months to really integrate, depending on how willing you are to catch yourself in old patterns and consciously choose new ones. But most people start seeing shifts within the first few weeks because they're finally working with their psychology instead of against it. Remember, this isn't about becoming a different person. It's about accessing parts of yourself that already exist but have been buried under layers of conditioning that taught you to want things desperately instead of receiving them naturally. You already know how to operate from sufficiency. You just have to remember how to access that state consistently. Here's the brutal truth about why most people fail at this. Even when they understand the concepts perfectly, they make the same predictable mistakes that keep them stuck in the old patterns. And then they blame the method instead of recognizing where they went wrong. The biggest mistake: they try to feel abundant while still acting desperate. You'll see people meditating on financial freedom for an hour, then immediately checking their bank account 17 times and panicking about bills. They'll visualize their dream relationship, then spend 3 hours analyzing why their crush didn't text back. They're literally practicing abundance and scarcity at the same time, which creates this internal conflict that cancels everything out. Your energy has to match your actions, or the whole thing falls apart. Another massive trap is turning this into another form of perfectionism. People think they have to be in receiving mode 24/7, and the moment they feel desperate or anxious, they beat themselves up for doing it wrong. But here's the thing: slipping back into old patterns isn't failure. It's part of the process. You're rewiring decades of conditioning. Of course you're going to have setbacks. The goal isn't to never feel desperate again. It's to notice when you're in desperate mode and shift out of it faster each time. Then there's the instant gratification trap. People try this for a week, don't see dramatic results, and conclude it doesn't work. But you're not trying to manifest magic here. You're changing fundamental patterns in how you relate to your desires, and that takes time. Most people start seeing subtle shifts within a few weeks, but the real transformation happens over months. If you're expecting overnight miracles, you're still operating from desperate energy disguised as spiritual practice. Here's one that's really sneaky. People get so focused on not wanting that they become afraid to have preferences or take action toward their goals. They think embodying receiving energy means becoming passive or pretending they don't care about anything. But that's not detachment, that's dissociation. True receiving energy is active and engaged. You still pursue what you want. You just do it from a place of confidence rather than desperation. You still have preferences, you just don't let unmet preferences destroy your peace. The comparison trap destroys more progress than almost anything else. You start embodying abundance, then you see someone else get exactly what you want, and suddenly you're back in scarcity mode, wondering why their timing is better than yours. But other people's success has nothing to do with your journey. Their receiving something doesn't mean there's less available for you. When you truly understand abundance, other people's wins become proof that what you want is possible, not evidence that you're being left behind. Another killer mistake is trying to control the how instead of focusing on the what and who. You get attached to specific paths, specific people, specific timelines. You think your dream job has to come through LinkedIn, or your perfect relationship has to happen through dating apps, or your financial breakthrough has to look a certain way. But when you're truly in receiving mode, you're open to opportunities coming from directions you never expected. The universe doesn't follow your business plan. People also sabotage themselves by talking about their desires from the wrong energy. They tell everyone about their goals, but they do it with this desperate seeking approval energy that actually pushes opportunities away. Or they go to the opposite extreme and become secretive about everything because they think talking about it will jinx it. Both approaches miss the point. It's not about whether you talk about your goals, it's about the energy you bring to those conversations. Here's a big one that trips up even people who should know better. They use this method as another form of spiritual bypass. Instead of dealing with practical issues in their life, they just try to embody their way out of everything. But embodiment without action is just daydreaming with better marketing. If you're broke, you still need to manage your money better and look for income opportunities. If you're lonely, you still need to put yourself in situations where you can meet people. The difference is you do these things from abundance instead of desperation. The final mistake that kills more progress than anything else: they give their power away to external validation. They let one rejection, one bad day, one unexpected setback convince them that the method doesn't work or that they're not good enough to receive what they want. But external circumstances are always going to fluctuate. That's not evidence that you're doing something wrong. It's just Tuesday. Your worth isn't determined by how quickly manifestations show up, and your receiving ability isn't measured by external results. The people who actually succeed with this understand that embodiment is an internal game first. They focus on how they feel, how they show up, and how they respond to whatever happens, rather than trying to control outcomes. They treat setbacks as information rather than evidence of failure. And most importantly, they stick with the process long enough for it to actually rewire their nervous system instead of giving up the moment things get challenging. Let's get specific about where this backwards law principle creates the most dramatic shifts, because some areas of life respond to this approach way better than others, and knowing where to focus your energy first can make all the difference. Career and business opportunities are probably where you'll see the fastest results. Here's why. Professional environments are incredibly sensitive to desperate energy. Hiring managers can smell neediness from across the conference table, and clients run from service providers who seem like they need the work too badly. But when you embody the energy of someone who knows their value and isn't attached to any specific outcome, everything changes. You interview like someone who's evaluating whether the company is right for you, not just hoping they'll choose you. You price your services like someone who knows they're worth it. You network like someone who's genuinely interested in connecting, not hunting for your next meal. The shift is so obvious that opportunities start flowing toward you because you're finally magnetic instead of repulsive. Dating and relationships is where this gets really powerful, but also where people mess it up the most. Desperate relationship energy is like wearing cologne made of red flags. People can sense when you need them to fill some void in your life, and that neediness pushes away the exact kind of secure, confident people you actually want to attract. But when you genuinely enjoy your own company and approach dating from curiosity rather than desperation, you become incredibly attractive. You're not interviewing people to see if they're good enough to save you from loneliness. You're getting to know them to see if you actually enjoy their company. That shift in energy changes everything about how you show up, what you talk about, and who you attract. Money and financial abundance respond beautifully to this approach, but you have to be smart about it. Embodying financial security doesn't mean acting rich when you're broke or making stupid spending decisions because you're trusting the universe. It means making financial decisions from abundance rather than scarcity. Instead of hoarding every penny out of fear, you invest in yourself and opportunities that align with your values. Instead of taking any job because you're desperate, you hold out for positions that actually fit your skills and goals. Instead of cheap fear-based thinking, you think strategically about how to create value for others. The energy shift changes how you negotiate, how you present yourself professionally, and what opportunities you notice and pursue. Creative projects and artistic endeavors are where this principle becomes almost magical. Creative blocks almost always come from trying too hard, from putting too much pressure on your work to be perfect or successful. But when you create from joy rather than need, when you're genuinely curious about what wants to emerge through you rather than desperate to produce something impressive, your creativity flows effortlessly. You stop second-guessing every choice, stop comparing your work to others, and stop caring so much about external validation that you forget why you started creating in the first place. Health and fitness transformations work incredibly well with this approach because most people sabotage their progress with desperate, all-or-nothing energy. They hate their bodies so much that they approach fitness like punishment, or they're so desperate to see results that they burn themselves out with unsustainable routines. But when you embody the energy of someone who genuinely cares for their body, who exercises because it feels good rather than because they're trying to fix something wrong with themselves, the whole process becomes sustainable. You make food choices from self-love rather than self-hatred. You exercise consistently because you enjoy how it makes you feel, not because you're trying to earn your worth. Social connections and friendships flourish when you stop trying so hard to be liked and start genuinely enjoying people for who they are. Desperate social energy makes people uncomfortable because they can sense that you need something from them. But when you're genuinely interested in others without needing them to validate your worth, social interactions become effortless. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head, stop analyzing every interaction for signs of approval or rejection, and start actually connecting with people as human beings. Real estate and major purchases become surprisingly smooth when you approach them from abundance rather than scarcity. Instead of desperately trying to convince sellers or lenders to work with you, you present yourself as someone who knows what they want and has the confidence to walk away if it's not the right fit. That energy shift often leads to better deals and smoother transactions because you're negotiating from strength rather than desperation. Even legal issues and conflicts resolve more favorably when you approach them from grounded confidence rather than reactive fear. When you're not desperate for specific outcomes, when you can stay centered regardless of what happens, you make better decisions and present yourself more credibly. Other parties can sense when you're coming from fear versus when you're coming from strength, and they respond accordingly. The areas where this works best all have one thing in common. They involve other people who are subconsciously reading your energy and making decisions based on how you make them feel. Any situation where human psychology and interpersonal dynamics play a role will respond dramatically to this energy shift. The more you can embody confidence, abundance, and genuine interest in creating win-win outcomes, the more life starts working in your favor in ways that seem almost too good to be true. Here's what most people don't realize about letting go. They think it means becoming passive, lowering their standards, or settling for less than they deserve. They think it's about giving up on their dreams and pretending they don't want what they want. But that's not letting go. That's just another form of resistance disguised as surrender. Real letting go is the most powerful thing you can do, because it frees up all the energy you've been wasting on desperate wanting and redirects it toward inspired action. When you truly let go, you don't stop pursuing your goals. You stop pursuing them from a place of lack and start pursuing them from a place of knowing. You don't lower your standards, you raise them because you're no longer willing to accept opportunities that come from desperation. Think about the most confident person you know. They're not confident because they don't want anything. They're confident because they know they can handle whatever happens. They pursue what they want without being emotionally hijacked by whether they get it or not. That's the energy that changes everything. The backwards law isn't some mystical concept that only works for spiritual gurus or people who meditate on mountaintops. It's basic human psychology. When you stop broadcasting the frequency of not having what you want, you stop pushing away the very things you're trying to attract. When you embody the energy of someone who knows they're worthy of good things start showing up not because the universe is rewarding you, but because you've finally stopped getting in your own way. Every person who seems to effortlessly attract success, love, money, or opportunities has learned this secret, whether they realize it or not. They've figured out how to want things without needing them, how to pursue goals without being attached to outcomes, how to take action from confidence rather than desperation. And once you understand how this works, you can't unsee it in your own life and in the lives of everyone around you. The choice is yours. You can keep white-knuckling your way through life, pushing and striving and wondering why everything feels so hard. Or you can learn to work with your psychology instead of against it. You can discover what it feels like to pursue your biggest dreams from a place of knowing rather than hoping. You can find out what becomes possible when you stop trying so hard to make things happen and start allowing them to unfold naturally. But understanding this intellectually isn't enough. You have to actually practice it. Actually catch yourself in those desperate patterns and consciously choose a different way of being. You have to be willing to feel uncomfortable while you rewire decades of conditioning. You have to trust the process even when your logical mind is screaming that none of this makes sense. The people who get extraordinary results from this approach are the ones who commit to the process long enough for it to become their new normal. They don't give up after a week when they don't see immediate changes. They don't let one bad day convince them that it doesn't work. They stay with it until embodying abundance becomes as natural as breathing. So here's your next step. Pick one area of your life where you've been desperately wanting something for months or years. Starting today, practice embodying the energy of someone who already has what you want, not because you're pretending or faking it, but because you're accessing the part of yourself that knows you're worthy of receiving it. Notice when you slip back into desperate patterns, then consciously shift back into receiving mode. Do this consistently for the next 30 days and watch how differently people respond to you, how different opportunities start showing up, and how much more natural it becomes to operate from abundance rather than lack. The backwards method isn't just about getting what you want. It's about becoming the kind of person who naturally attracts what they want because they've learned to embody the energy that makes it inevitable. And once you experience that shift, there's no going back to the exhausting cycle of desperate wanting and disappointing outcomes. You'll wonder why nobody ever taught you this before, and you'll never approach your goals the same way again.